MS-13, or Mara Salvatrucha, is one of the most feared and brutal street gangs in the world. Its origins trace back to the 1980s in Los Angeles, California, during a period of social unrest and significant demographic changes in the city. The gang was born out of the experiences of Salvadoran immigrants who fled their war-torn homeland during the Salvadoran Civil War, 1980 to 1992, a conflict that left over 75,000 dead and forced hundreds of thousands to seek refuge in the United States. The Salvadorans who arrived in Los Angeles were often poor, traumatized by war, and thrust into neighborhoods already dominated by well-established gangs, such as the Bloods, Crips, and various Mexican gangs. This atmosphere of hostility and marginalization fostered the conditions necessary for the formation of a gang dedicated to self-preservation and protection. Initially, MS-13 began as a group formed for mutual protection among Salvadoran youth who felt excluded from both American society and the local immigrant communities. However, what began as a neighborhood defense group quickly escalated into a violent and organized criminal enterprise. Over time, MS-13 adopted a distinct identity, incorporating elements of Salvadoran culture, including references to indigenous symbols and tattoos, while fostering a reputation for extreme violence. Their adoption of machetes as a signature weapon further symbolized their Salvadoran roots and willingness to commit acts of sheer brutality. As MS-13 grew in numbers, their goals expanded from mere self-defense to the pursuit of wealth, power, and territorial control. By the 1990s, the gang evolved into a highly organized criminal syndicate, engaging in various illicit activities, including drug trafficking, human smuggling, weapons dealing, extortion, and murder. Their operations were no longer confined to street-level crime, but extended to sophisticated, large-scale criminal enterprises. Unlike other street gangs that primarily operated locally, MS-13 began establishing transnational connections, capitalizing on the geographical distribution of its members across North, Central, and South America. The United States government's deportation policies in the 1990s played a pivotal role in the gang's transformation into a global criminal network. Thousands of gang members, many of whom were hardened criminals with extensive experience in violent street warfare, were deported to El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. These deportations inadvertently facilitated the spread of MS-13's influence across Central America, where fragile political institutions and inadequate law enforcement capabilities created an environment ripe for the gang's growth. In their home countries, deported gang members quickly regrouped, formed new cliques, and replicated their violent modus operandi, establishing MS-13 as a dominant force across the region. The most defining characteristic of MS-13 is its use of extreme violence as both a survival mechanism and a strategic tool. The gang has become infamous for its public displays of brutality, which often include dismemberments, beheadings, and torture. These violent acts are not random but carefully orchestrated to send a clear message. MS-13 controls its territory through fear and absolute dominance. This deliberate use of fear not only deters rival gangs, but also suppresses any form of community resistance, ensuring that their reign of terror remains unchallenged. MS-13 also employs violence internally to maintain discipline and loyalty within its ranks. Members are required to adhere strictly to the gang's code, and disobedience is met with harsh punishment, often death. New recruits must undergo violent initiation rites that typically involve committing murder or enduring severe physical beatings to prove their loyalty and commitment. This brutal internal culture reinforces the gang's unity and perpetuates its reputation for ruthlessness, making it nearly impossible for members to leave without facing deadly consequences. Contrary to the common perception of street gangs as disorganized and chaotic, MS-13 operates with a well-defined hierarchical structure. The gang is divided into numerous cliques or regional factions, each responsible for its own territory. Despite the autonomy of individual cliques, they remain connected through shared allegiances to the broader organization and adhere to a common set of rules and rituals. Leadership within the gang is distributed across various levels, with local leaders often referred to as shot callers, overseeing the operations of individual cliques. At the top of the hierarchy are senior leaders, many of whom continue to exert influence even while incarcerated. Prisons serve as critical hubs for MS-13's operations, providing a secure environment for planning, communication, and recruitment. In many cases, orders for violent acts and large-scale criminal operations originate from within prison walls. This prison-based leadership model allows MS-13 to maintain cohesion and continuity, even when significant numbers of its members are incarcerated or killed. The gang's decentralized yet interconnected structure also makes it difficult for law enforcement to dismantle the organization, as new leaders can emerge quickly to replace those who are arrested or eliminated. While MS-13 began in Los Angeles, it has evolved into a transnational criminal organization with a presence in numerous countries. The deportation of gang members back to Central America in the 1990s and 2000s played a significant role in this global expansion, allowing MS-13 to establish a powerful foothold in countries such as El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. Today, the gang operates in a wide array of locations, from major cities in the United States, including New York, Boston, and Washington, D.C., to rural areas across Central America. The gang's international presence allows it to engage in cross-border criminal activities, such as drug and human trafficking. Their extensive network enables the seamless movement of narcotics, firearms, and people across national borders, further complicating efforts by law enforcement agencies to combat their operations. Additionally, the gang's reach extends into Mexico, where MS-13 collaborates with powerful drug cartels to facilitate the trafficking of illicit goods. This alliance with organized crime syndicates in Mexico amplifies MS-13's influence and provides them with access to sophisticated weaponry and resources. The rise of MS-13 has had profound social and political repercussions in the regions it dominates. In neighborhoods where the gang operates, residents live in constant fear of violence, extortion, and retribution. Small businesses are often forced to pay protection fees, and those who refuse risk facing severe consequences, including physical harm or death. Public spaces, schools, and community centers are frequently under the gang's control, creating a pervasive atmosphere of fear that undermines social cohesion and economic stability. In the United States, MS-13 has become a focal point in the political discourse surrounding immigration and national security. Some political leaders have cited the gang's presence as a justification for stricter immigration policies, increased border security, and aggressive law enforcement measures. Meanwhile, in Central America, governments have adopted harsh mano dura, iron fist policies, which involve mass arrests, military-style crackdowns, and enhanced sentencing laws aimed at curbing gang activity. While these policies have achieved some short-term success, critics argue that they often exacerbate underlying social problems, such as poverty, unemployment, and lack of education, which contribute to the cycle of gang violence. Law enforcement agencies face numerous challenges in their efforts to combat MS-13. The gang's decentralized structure, coupled with its use of violence and intimidation, makes it difficult to infiltrate and dismantle. Additionally, MS-13's transnational network complicates law enforcement coordination across national borders, requiring extensive international cooperation and intelligence sharing. Efforts to combat the gang often result in temporary setbacks, but MS-13 has proven remarkably resilient, quickly regrouping and adapting to new strategies deployed by law enforcement. Moreover, The gang's willingness to target law enforcement personnel adds a significant layer of complexity to anti-gang operations. Police officers, judges, and prosecutors often become targets of intimidation and violence, creating a climate of fear that hinders the criminal justice system's effectiveness. The threat to law enforcement is particularly acute in Central America, where corruption, underfunding, and inadequate resources further weaken the state's capacity to combat MS-13. MS-13's rise from a small, protective group of Salvadoran immigrants to a global criminal powerhouse is a stark reminder of how socioeconomic factors, political instability, and flawed policies can fuel the growth of violent organizations. The gang's legacy of extreme violence, fear, and criminal enterprise continues to challenge communities, law enforcement agencies, and policymakers around the world. Combating MS-13 requires a comprehensive approach that goes beyond law enforcement, addressing the root causes of gang membership, such as poverty, lack of education, and social marginalization. Without significant investment in social and economic development, MS-13 is likely to remain a persistent threat to global security and public safety for years to come.